You're about to discover the number one growth tactic you can start using today to explode your podcast growth. Over the last 5 years, I've interviewed and coached 400 plus podcasters. And there's a clear difference between those who stay stuck with slow and steady growth for years and those who manage to experience explosive podcast growth. Like one of our clients, Raven, who was stuck at 400 monthly downloads after 2 years of podcasting. She was on the verge of quitting her show, but with simple changes, we were able to get her to 23,000 monthly downloads 11 months later. And she was able to publish books off the back of her show and start generating income from her podcast. So in this video, I'm going to break why it feels like no one seems to be paying attention to your show despite you having meaningful conversation for years. 4 small but mighty methods you can start using today in order to grow your podcast way faster. And finally, a special type of episode you can start using to expand your podcast reach on command. So what exactly is this growth tactic that you can use to grow way faster? So imagine for a second you've had the goal for the last 2 years to lose weight. You've been adding some weight over time, enjoying your McDonald's, your nachos here or there, one too many takeaways, whatever that looks like. You've been adding weight slowly over the last 2 years. And again, this is just hypothetically speaking. I'm not saying you're fat as. Anyways, for the last 2 years, that's been your goal. But for whatever reason, you never seem to make good progress. You might buy a gym membership, but never stay consistent. And then one day out of the blue, you get called up by your doctor. And he says to you, hey, by the way, we have the results back from your recent blood and heart tests. And it seems like your blood pressure is dangerously high. If this carries on at this rate, you have an extremely high chance of having a heart attack within the next 6 months. Something needs to change. And in that moment, just like that, you kick into gear and you never miss another gym session. 6 months down the line, you've lost a bunch of weight. And then you finally get your results back, which shows you that your blood pressure has dropped dramatically. And you are now living a much healthier lifestyle. The question is, why was it that for the last 2 years, even though you had the goal of losing weight, you didn't take action? And then out of the blue, you managed to change your behavior in an instant because of a message you received from a doctor. Well, the reason is this. For the last 2 years of you trying to lose weight, there was no urgency. Like, yes, you wanted to lose weight, but there was no sense of real urgency as to why you should lose weight. But as soon as your doctor called you and said, hey, by the way, dude, you're actually way too overweight and you're at risk of having a heart attack at any point. What happens in that moment is a sense of urgency kicks in deep inside of you. That forces you to take massive, drastic action to the goal you already have. That makes you pay way more attention to your health. Now, what the hell does this have to do with podcasting? Let's say, for example, you've been podcasting for 2-3 years and your show still isn't picking up traction, but you have been posting on social media so people do see your promotions. You have been posting constantly on Apple and Spotify, so you are being found on these platforms. And let's say you are getting high-profile guests onto your show and you have episodes that take off and then some that kind of fluctuate. And you have some episodes that have exploded, but then others that are kind of quite small. If you've been taking all these actions, it means that you are getting exposure on your show. But for some reason, the audience isn't growing. And it's most likely because you're not covering content that feels urgent enough. The content you're producing right now isn't making someone have that jolt of urgency, making them want to listen to episodes right at this very moment. Is the difference between having a general fitness podcast titled, when you're promoting it, How to Lose Weight, versus if you have high blood pressure, here's one thing you can do today in order to reduce your chance of a heart attack. Now imagine you saw that promotion online where I was like, hey, how to lose weight, versus that exact title that we've just seen. That's how urgency is able to get someone to take way more action. That's how adding urgency to your podcast as a tactic for your promotional efforts to have way more weight, to convert at a way higher rate, to get way more people to pay attention to your show because it feels far more urgent. So what does this actually look like and what are 4 steps that you can take? Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, this is great, Ant, but like, how the hell do I do this? My podcast doesn't really inherently feel urgent. Maybe it's like general business or broad and generic. Here are 4 things you can do today in order to change that. The first thing is this. Simply find out the urgent needs of your audience. Do a survey, speak to the listeners who give you feedback, and ask them very simple questions of, hey, right now, what are the things you're currently going through that you're finding challenging? What are some of the painful problems you are going through right now? And if you had a magic wand that we could wave and a problem to solve, what problem would that be? You first need to have clarity around the painful problems your audience are going through, because it's those painful problems that feels very urgent to them right now. The same way that if you were looking to lose weight and you saw promotion all about the top foods to eat in California, I don't know why I say California, a random example, but just go with it. You're not going to pay attention to it. Your mind is so narrowly focused to solving this painful, urgent problem, which is, hey, I'm overweight and I'm at risk of having a heart attack within the next 6 months if I don't fix up. So for you, when you can find out and pinpoint those urgent problems that your audience are facing, that will give you the direction you need to know what topics to double down on for your show. And if you're in a spot where you're thinking, that's great, but I don't really have a big audience, so how would I find out this information? Well, just start looking into online communities, maybe forums, maybe where people are asking questions consistently. Maybe look at YouTube trends of what's going on within your space. That will tell you where the attention is flowing. And oftentimes where the attention is flowing is to what people find most urgent. So let's say, for example, you went into a thread or a forum and you do a bit of digging within these forums and you realize that a lot of people seem to be struggling with social anxiety. Like it keeps popping up over and over again. And then you look on Google Trends and you see that, oh my God, this is a trending topic. Like more and more people seem to be having and suffering with social anxiety. Now, if you're someone where things perfectly align and it so happens to be that you've gone through social anxiety and you've overcome that problem yourself, then you know how painful that problem is. But more importantly, you know it's an urgent problem that needs to be fixed that your audience are going through. So rather than you just covering general personal development topics, you then shift the show and present it as, hey, here's how to solve your social anxiety. That's a way more urgent problem for people, which will make way more people pay attention to your show. It means that when you cover this consistently, way more people will come back for more. Then the second thing you need to do once you understand what that urgent problem you're looking to solve is with your podcast is create very targeted and specific content helping your audience solve that specific problem. If you imagine that your podcast is really there to provide and create a transformation from your audience, from a before state where they have social anxiety and it's crippling, to an after state where they feel confident in social and public situations, that's a transformation, as a clear before and after. If you're able to look at your content as the bridge between the before and after and make highly targeted content, showing them very clear steps they can take to solve those painful problems, now every single episode that you create feels like a stepping stone to a future your audience are trying to create. Every single episode is positioned as a solution to their problems. Now, what does that mean for you when you promote your podcast on social media? And what does that mean for you when a first-time listener discovers your show and then looks through your entire back catalog, which is all helping them solve that urgent and painful problem? What happens to your listenership and your ability to galvanize and keep an audience hooked on your content when your show is positioned as the thing that they need to solve that painful, urgent problem they're going through? Once again, this is the power of using urgency. Now, let's say you've made that pivot, you now have a much more targeted show because you found out that a lot of your audience suffer with social anxiety. You're now creating very highly targeted content where every single episode is focused on helping your audience solve that specific problem. Your show will start moving in the right direction. And then I've got a bonus tactic for you when it comes to using urgency. You need to make sure that your podcast episode titles are irresistible, meaning you actually use urgency within your episode titles. Instead of just a generic show called like How to Reduce Anxiety, you can say, hey, what to do if your crippling anxiety is stopping you from getting a promotion at work. You see the clear difference. One is just like how to solve anxiety, cool, great. The other one is, hey, if you're feeling this particular thing, what to do when social anxiety is stopping you from getting a promotion at work. We're really amplifying the pain and creating a certain level of urgency, saying, hey, your social anxiety is stopping you from reaching the desired outcome. When you have episode titles that feel relevant, that feel urgent, way more people will click play when they see you promoting on social media. If you share it in your newsletter, way more people will convert because it feels urgent to them right now. If it doesn't feel urgent, they just think, oh, I can get to that. I mean, that's what I do. I'm sure, for you tell me, like, when have you ever clicked on something that doesn't feel really relevant and urgent to you right now? It doesn't really happen. So making sure that your episode titles are written in a way that shows the urgency of the episode. That doesn't just leave it as a thing that people can ignore, but forces that person to pay attention and listen to the episode right now. And then a final tactic that you can start using in order to explode the growth of your show is something known as newsjacking. Now, I discovered this weird strategy known as newsjacking when I interviewed the host of the Self-Care Club 2 years ago. They had a podcast back then that was in over 100,000 monthly downloads, and I was at a conference and I bumped into them. And I asked them a question, which was, hey, you've gotten your show to the point that so many podcasters would love to get to. How did you get to this point? And their answer was surprising. Up until that point, I was getting generic answers like, oh, post on social media, provide valuable content, be consistent, things we all know we should be doing. But a host of the Self-Care Club gave me a totally different answer. And they simply said, hey, we grew our show by covering urgent and timely content. There's something known as newsjacking, where whenever a big news story broke out in the industry within self-care, whether that's a new study, a new realization, a new weird strategy, whatever that might be, it was a breakout moment within their space. They made sure to cover that topic instantly. And they found that by doing that, it meant that they could expand their reach. They could tap into an audience who were already looking for that type of content and tap into a new audience who wouldn't have known them before. Instead of just their general show, they kind of like said, hey, what's urgent and going on right now within our actual space? So that's a news headline. They covered that. And that allowed them to consistently break past their current reach by tapping into an audience that wouldn't have known they existed otherwise. Now for you, you can do the same thing. Simply ask yourself, hey, what are the relevant news topics that's urgent right now for my audience? Now you don't have to become a news channel or a news podcast. That wouldn't be very fun for anyone, right? But you can use these moments, whether that's once a month, where you have an episode dedicated to something like this. And in doing so, you expand your reach way more. So here's an example of what that might look like. And we actually had a client who did this, right? Her podcast was all about midlife calm. And then during the US election, she covered a general topic talking about how to keep calm during the election while things are so chaotic. That episode blew up and actually doubled her listenership for that particular episode. And she saw an upward tick of the number of people who stayed listening after that specific episode. This is the power of newsjacking, tapping into current news in your space right now that feel urgent for your audience. Look, there you have it. The number one tactic you can start using today in order to blow up your show's growth is simply utilizing urgency and making your content feel irresistible to the audience you're trying to reach. Look, my name is Anthony Ranieri. I hope you've enjoyed this. Over the last 5 years, I've interviewed and coached 400 plus podcasters. And with this channel, I hope to give you clarity around why your show isn't growing or monetizing as fast as you'd like. And then just giving you very simple, straightforward tactics and steps and strategies that you can start using to grow and monetize way faster. If you enjoyed this, leave a like. And if you have any questions, let me know down below in the comment section. With that being said, I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.